Today's lesson is the 7 cream jugs. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.And
I'm Helen.
And we've got a work of literature that we're going to talk to you about today. It's a short story by the British author Saki, whose real name is H.H. Munro. He lived from 1870 to 1916, and he wrote lots of short stories, and this is one of them that we're going to summarize today, entitled The 7 Cream Jugs.
Yep, Saki wrote a lot of short stories about British society at the turn of the century, so that's between the late 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. And a lot of his stories talk about British society, the stupidity of the society that he lived in and how fake it could be sometimes, and also the unkindness that people showed each other. So his stories weren't all light and happy. There was a lot of criticism and a tinge of darkness involved in many of them.
Right, and of course this story is about some jugs which you put cream inside of. And of course, you can use cream for all sorts of different things. It's a dairy product. It's kind of thicker than milk. I suppose you can put it in your coffee, or you can whip it and put it on your pie or your cake or something like that. But these, of course, are jugs. And, of course, someone has a collection of 7 of those jugs. And we're going to find out that that number kind of changes as we dig into our story. So let's listen to the first part of our lesson here and talk about Mr. and Mrs. Pigeoncoat.
The 7 cream jugs.
When Mr. and Mrs. Pigeoncoat received word that their cousin Wilfred was driving over to pay them an overnight visit, they became anxious. Wilfred was a common name in the Pigeoncoat family.They had cousins of that name who were soldiers, diplomats, and distinguished gentlemen. However, only one Wilfred had a car to their knowledge, and he was best known for being a thief.
大家好，标题中我们看到单字 jug， 这个字是名词，指带柄且顶部开口的罐或是壶。例如 Marty took a jug of milk out of the fridge and put it on the counter.Marty 从冰箱拿出一罐牛奶，并把它放在柜台上。或是 I bought a large jug of local wine when I was at the farmer's market. 我去农夫市集的时候，买了一大罐当地的酒。
So diving right into our story for today, the 7 cream jugs.It says here, when Mr. and Mrs. Pigeoncoat received word that their cousin Wilfred was driving over to pay them an overnight visit, they became anxious. So here we have a couple. The couple's last name is Pigeoncoat, so it's Mr. and Mrs. Pigeoncoat. When they received word,meaning when they found out, when they got the message to receive word, that's what it means, that their cousin Wilfred was driving over to pay them an overnight visit. So to pay someone a visit just means to visit that person. It's another way of simply saying to visit somebody, to pay someone a visit. They became anxious. So Mr. and Mrs. Pigeoncoat became anxious. They became worried when they found out that their cousin Wilfred was coming over to visit them.
Right, so I guess Wilfred was going to actually spend the night with them, not just come, have tea, and then leave. He was going to stay the night. And Wilfred was a common name in the Pigeoncoat family. They had cousins of that name who were soldiers, diplomats, and distinguished gentlemen. This, again, is also common in English-speaking countries. Sometimes people have the same name in the same family, especially if they have Roger Wilson I or Roger Wilson II, etc., or they might have different branches of the family with people with the same name. Maybe there's several Marys that you know, cousins and cousins twice removed, and aunts and uncles. Of course, uncles wouldn't be named Mary, but you get the idea.
Right. So in this family, Wilfred was a very common name. They had cousins of that name who were soldiers, diplomats, and distinguished gentlemen. So in this family, you had members named Wilfred from all levels of society. You had soldiers, diplomats. Diplomats are officials whose job is to represent the government in a foreign country. So it's a very important and respectable job. It's a job that belongs to a high level of society. And distinguished gentleman. Distinguished here, it describes somebody who is respected or somebody who is successful. And of course, the word goes well with gentleman because gentleman is somebody who is, they could be from a noble family or somebody from a family that is of the upper class. So basically, a lot of people in the Pigeon Coat family have the name Wilfred, but they're not isolated to one level of society because you have soldiers, you have diplomats, and you have distinguished gentlemen by that name.
Exactly. So they have people in all levels of society here. However, only one Wilfred had a car to their knowledge, and he was best known for being a thief. So they were thinking, a cousin Wilfred is coming to pay us an overnight visit, but which Wilfred is it? Well, this guy's going to drive to our house, so we only know of one Wilfred who has a car. Only one Wilfred had a car to their knowledge. So if something is to your knowledge, that just means as far as you know. You could also say as far as they knew, only one Wilfred had a car. They didn't know about any other Wilfreds who had a car. They weren't aware of any other Wilfreds in their family who owned a car.
Right. So I could also say, as an example sentence for the phrase to one's knowledge, I could say to my knowledge, or I could also say to the best of my knowledge, the teacher won't give us our test results until next week, which means as far as I know, we're not going to get the test results until next week.
Indeed. So they guessed that the Wilfred that was coming to visit was the one who has a car, and they knew that the one who had a car was best known for being a thief. So yes, he's got a car. That's good. He can leave pretty quickly if we kick him out of the house or something. But unfortunately, he's got a reputation for being a thief. And a thief, of course, is a person who steals things. So they got to be careful if this guy's going to come visit. This person might try to steal things. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our summary for today. Let's move on now and continue talking about the plot of our story.
His visit was a problem because the Pigeon Coats were in the midst of celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary, and as a result, there were a number of expensive gifts lying around. Chief among them was an assortment of silver tableware that included 7 cream jugs.
第二部分我们看到名词 midst 表示中间当中，用法为 in the midst of 加名词。举例来说 In the midst of chaos, Sandra stayed calm. 在一阵混乱之中 Sandra 保持冷静。或是 The reporter interrupted him in the midst of his speech to ask a question. 一名记者为了问问题而打断讲者的演讲。再来我们看到名词 assortment常见用法为 an assortment of 加名词，指各式各样的。例如 The store has an assortment of colored ribbons that you can choose from. 店内有各式各样的彩色缎带任君挑选。或是 You can find a wide assortment of candy and other sweets in this store. 你可以在这家店找到各式各样的糖果和其他甜食。另外补充一个同义片语 a variety of 加名词Variety, V-A-R-I-E-T-Y, a variety of, 表示各式各样的。像是 This theater doesn't offer a variety of movies to choose from. 这间戏院没有提供多种不同的电影可以选择。也可以说 This artist's toolbox has a variety of paints and brushes. 这个艺术家的工具组有多种颜料和画笔。接下来我们看到单字 tableware。这个字是名词，指餐具，像是 There are many silver tableware in this shop. I'm sure you can find the perfect ones for your new house. 这家店有许多银质的餐具，我相信你一定能为你的新家找到一副完美的餐具。或是 The set includes all tableware that you can think of, such as plates, bowls, forks, etc. 这个组合包含了所有你能想到的餐具，像是盘子、碗、叉子等等。
So the Pigeoncoats are now very anxious because they've learned that their cousin Wilfred is going to visit them. And Wilfred, who is coming by car, is known to be a thief because that is the only cousin who has a car. That's the cousin who's a thief. And his visit was a problem because the Pigeoncoats were in the midst of celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. And as a result, there were a number of expensive gifts lying around.
Indeed, so that was a problem. If this guy is a thief, well, they've got all these things lying around that this guy might steal. And, of course, it's customary in English society to give people gifts if they're celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. That's a long time to be married. So, of course, it's worthy of celebration. And they were in the midst of celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. So if you're in the midst of something, you're in the middle of a certain activity. In this particular case, they were in the midst of celebrating their anniversary. You could be in the midst of a storm, for example. If you went hiking and you suddenly encountered a big storm, you could be in the midst of a storm. You have to wait there until the storm clears up. But in this particular case, they were in the midst of celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. It was still going on. So as a result, there were a number of expensive gifts lying around.
Right, and here the word anniversary is a date or celebration of something that happened in the past that is very important to you. So you wouldn't say anniversary for birthday because a birthday is just a birthday. It's a celebration of the day when you were born. But an anniversary could be a celebration for a wedding, the day that a couple got married, or it could be an anniversary of the time someone began working at a company until the present moment. So it could be the 10th anniversary of someone's employment at a particular company. So it's some kind of celebration related to an event that happened in the past.
Yes, tomorrow is our 5th wedding anniversary. We've been married for 5 years, for example, so we're going to have a party and stuff like that. And in this particular case, they've been married for 25 years. It's their 25th wedding anniversary. But unfortunately, there were a lot of expensive gifts lying around. So, of course, people gave them gifts to help them celebrate their anniversary. And they received so many gifts that they were just lying around the house. They had not been put away because there were so many of them.
Yes, so if you have things lying around the house, it means it's just spread all over the place in a sort of disorganized way. And chief among them was an assortment of silver tableware that included 7 cream jugs. So chief among them here, the word them refers to all of the expensive gifts that were lying around. And chief among them means the most important objects or object among these gifts. Chief means the most important. So what was the most important of all of these expensive gifts? It was an assortment of silver tableware that included 7 cream jugs. Tableware refers to all of those objects that you need to eat at the dinner table or to serve dinner. So this could include forks and knives and dishes and spoons and bowls and cream jugs, which you need to serve coffee to your guests. So there is an assortment of tableware, which just means that there are many of these things of different types.
Everything seems to be made out of silver. Silver is a precious metal. It's not as valuable as gold or platinum or something like that, but still, if you have silver tableware, you're probably pretty well off. And in this particular case, they had silver tableware that included 7 cream jugs. And those would be little jugs or little containers that have cream inside of them to add to food or perhaps to add to coffee or tea. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second paragraph for today. Let's move on and continue to talk about the plot of our featured story.
When Wilfred arrived, the Pigeoncoats greeted him politely and invited him to sit down for dinner, but the glint of the silver items had already caught his eye. After eating, he proceeded to examine each one thoroughly, raising the Pigeoncoats' suspicions with every piece he touched. After Wilfred went to take his bath, the Pigeoncoats decided to check his suitcase for stolen goods, and inside they discovered a silver cream jug lying among his clothes. Typical behavior for Wilfred, thought Mrs. Pigeoncoat as she reunited it with the others.
第三部分我们看到名词 glint， 指闪闪发光或是闪光。举例来说 The glint of the diamond is so beautiful, so I can't help looking at it. 这颗钻石的光芒太漂亮了，以至于我无法把我的视线移开。最后我们看到单字 suitcase， 这个字是名词，指手提箱。举例来说 Patrick had to pay an extra fee because his suitcase was over the weight limit. Patrick 必须多付一些费用，因为他的行李箱超重了。也可以说For my 3-week trip overseas, I packed both a large suitcase and a smaller carry-on bag. 为了我3个礼拜的海外旅行，我带了一个大行李箱和一个比较小的登机包当做我的随身行李。
So when Wilfred arrived to the Pigeon Cote house, there were a lot of expensive gifts lying around because the Pigeon Cotes are celebrating their 25th anniversary. So when Wilfred arrived, the Pigeon Cotes greeted him politely and invited him to sit down for dinner. But the glint of the silver items had already caught his eye. So in other words, when Wilfred sat down for dinner, all of the items that were lying around, all of those gifts that were made of silver, and silver being shiny, were looking really bright and were giving off little sparkles of light. And this scene caught Wilfred's eye, meaning it caught his attention.
So if something catches your eye, it means you see it, especially when it's something that happens surprisingly. For example, maybe you're walking down the street and something in a window catches your eye. Oh, that's a pretty outfit. I'd like to own that. That looks pretty cool. It catches your eye. It catches your attention. And after eating, he proceeded to examine each one thoroughly, raising the Pigeon Cote's suspicions with every piece he touched. So, of course, their guest, Wilfred, was sitting at the dinner table and saw all these items there, including the silver cream jugs, and he proceeded to examine each item. So, proceeded here just means he did that after he did something else. To proceed, to continue to do something. So if you ask someone if you can do something, they might say, oh, proceed. Go ahead and do that thing.
Yep, and proceed can also be used to describe an action that's annoying or surprising. So, for instance, I might say, I was walking down the street and a man approached me on a scooter and proceeded to ask me for money because his scooter was out of gas. So that was really annoying and unreasonable. So here he proceeded to examine each piece of tableware, and that was probably annoying the Pigeon Cotes because the Pigeon Cotes suspect Wilfred of being a thief. So the fact that he was picking up each piece and examining it thoroughly raised the Pigeon Cotes' suspicions with every piece he touched.
Right, that would probably be considered rude in most societies to actually pick up the tableware and check them out and look at them and stuff like that. It's probably not very polite. So, of course, that raised their suspicions because he was doing that. He must be casing the joint. He must be looking at this stuff, thinking about stealing those things. So, of course, it raised their suspicions, which means they became suspicious. They thought, if he's examining those pieces so thoroughly, so completely, then he must be thinking of stealing them. Okay, so again, they were suspicious of his actions. And after Wilfred went to take his bath, the Pigeon Cotes decided to check his suitcase for stolen goods. And inside they discovered a silver cream jug lying among his clothes. So, of course, he went to take his bath. He went to bathe. And so they thought, while he's in the bathroom, while he's taking a bath, let's check his suitcase. Let's kind of sneak a look inside his suitcase to see if he indeed has actually stolen something.
Yep, and the suitcase is the thing that he used to bring his clothes because he was staying overnight. So it had all of his belongings in there, and the Pigeon Cotes went to check to see if he had taken something and put it in his suitcase. So when they did that, they discovered that a silver cream jug was lying among his clothes. Typical behavior for Wilfred, thought Mrs. Pigeon Cote, as she reunited it with the others. So Mrs. Pigeon Cote thought typical behavior behavior for Wilfred. So she thinks Wilfred is a thief. And the idea that he took this silver cream jug was typical behavior because being a thief, he would steal something. And that's what Mrs. Pigeoncoat thought. So she took the silver cream jug and brought it back and put it among the other silver cream jugs.
So yes, she thought that was common behavior. That's typical behavior for Wilfred. So yes, indeed, he did indeed try to steal that silver jug there. So indeed, I'm going to take it back and put it back with the other items, and it will be just like things were before. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's listen now to Henny, our beloved Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分有一个句子写到 Pigeoncoat 夫妇呢正在庆祝结婚25周年纪念日，然后就写到说 And as a result, there were a number of expensive gifts lying around. 因此啊，就到处摆着许多昂贵的礼物。那这边有3个重点，我们第一个重点来看 as a result， 它是副词片语，用来表达因此结果，那就是用来带出表示结果的子句。当 as a result 摆在句首的时候，要记得用逗号跟后面子句隔开，就像课文用法。好，那现在如果我们在 as a result 后面加上 of， 那就会变成片语接系词咯。好，那这时候 as a result of 表示因为怎么样，由于怎么样，是用来带出原因的。那么 of 后面就是要接名词或动名词。例如 The road was closed as a result of a fallen tree. 那条道路因为树木倾倒封闭了。好，再来看第二个重点是课文用到 a number of expensive gifts 来表达许多昂贵的礼物。那我们这边来比较一下 a number of 跟 an amount of 的用法。 a number of 是用来修饰可数名词的量，那就用法是说 a number of 加上复数名词去表达说好几个什么东西，许多的什么东西。那么 an amount of 则是用来修饰不可数名词的量，可能像是时间啊、金钱啊、水等等，它的用法是 an amount of 加上不可数名词。那我们可以在 amount 和 number 前面去加入形容词修饰，可能用 high, large, great 去表达是大量的，或是加入 small 去表达它是少数的、少量的。那我们举一些例子，像 a large number of tourists 是大量的观光客， a small number of students 少数的学生， a large amount of money 大量的金钱， a small amount of information 表示少量的资讯。好，我们再来看到第3个重点是课文它用到 lying around 来表达到处摆着的意思。那么 lying 在这边呢是 lie 的现在分词 lie， 那特别注意 lie 当动词我们知道可以表达说谎，这时候它的动词3态会是 lie, lied, lied。好，那么 lie 当动词还可以描述说这个物品它是被平放在什么样的状态，人是躺卧躺下的状态，那这时候它的动词3态则是 lie, lay, lain， 所以注意说谎是 lie, lied, lied， 那我们这边说躺下或是平放则是 lie, lay, lain。 好，那我们要学的这个片语动词 lie around 它的3态，同学们应该猜得出来 lie 就是要用 lie, lay, lain 这个组合。好，那 lie around 以事物来当主词的话，它是表达到处乱扔啊、乱放。像我们可以造个例句 Her husband always leaves his socks lying around on the floor. 她老公总是把袜子到处乱扔在地上，好像家里总是会有这样的一个人。好，再来我们看到如果 lie around 以人当主词的话，它是表达无所事事、懒散度日的那种意思。举例来说 They spent the afternoon lying around on the beach. 他们整个下午就在海滩上懒散度日，去享受清闲。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Jug. Lucy poured herself a glass of orange juice from the jug on the table. Diplomat. As the daughter of a diplomat, Katie spent much of her childhood traveling. Distinguished. Professor Clark is a distinguished scholar of Russian literature. Midst. The boat's engine broke down in the midst of a terrible storm. Anniversary. My wife and I will celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary next month. Proceed. Dwight proceeded to eat all of my cookies even after he said he was full. Thoroughly. Clean the wound thoroughly before you put the bandage on.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoyed reading along with us. I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.